Okay, everyone. So welcome to, I guess it's week 5/week 6 because we didn't have a learning forum last week. So the activities that we'll be looking at will be kind of loosely based on both weeks. So just up on the screen, you can see what we're going to cover this week. And that's me working from home. And I'm sure it's the same for all of you. It's a little bit tricky to get motivated at the moment. Who's feeling that way? Thumbs up if you're feeling like it's hard to be motivated at the moment. Yeah. Oh yeah. Double thumbs up from Zach. Yeah, it's really hard. So I understand that completely. And it's going to take a little while for you to get used to the online learning environment. But I guess very important to remember is that we're all in this together. And it's not just us, but all of early childhood students, primary students, secondary students. We're all, shifting and teachers as well in and adapting our ways of teaching and learning. So introduction to Zoom. Some of you may have already done some Zoom sessions, but I just want to make sure that you're all comfortable with the format, and for those of you who are watching at home as well for future sessions that you might join. Also a bit of a check-in, want to share how you're going, how you're motivating yourselves, and also, any fun clips or things that you might have come across that you might like to share. Then we're going to go into some of the content from week 5 and week 6. So we'll look at the responses to your observations that you did, the 2 observations, the clips. So one was looking at students questioning in the classroom, and the second one was the sandpit observation, looking at the supervising teachers, open-ended questioning, and also how they're encouraging students to interact positively. Then we'll do a quick chat about what research skills you've used for that, and also for the second engagement activity, which was the research question, and also looking at some journal articles. That one, not so important, doesn't matter if you haven't got to that. So also turning inferences into reflections, and then we'll have an opportunity for a little bit of a social catch-up as well. Okay, so we've got 19 participants on board. Welcome to everyone. Lovely to see all of your gorgeous faces. Look at you all. Excellent. Really nice to see you all. Okay. So welcome to Zoom land. For some of you, this may be new. For some of you, you would have done a few sessions, or at least possibly have used it for previous assignments, whether it be at high school or experiences in a university setting as well. So make sure your microphone is set to mute when you're not talking. That's probably the most important thing in terms of background noise and interference. I'm sure a lot of you have got housemates and family who are all at home interacting with each other. So yeah, mic's muted when you're not talking. Second one, the chat button. Some of you have already noticed that. You can close and minimize it, and it will flash orange if a new comment has come up. What I'd like you to do now is to send me a thumbs up with your reaction button on the, yeah, beautiful. So you've all got that? Excellent. Can you send me a hello in the chat session, please? So just type in hello or good morning or how you going, or good day. That's a good one. Howdy, partner. Excellent. Beautiful. Oh, excellent. Great. So you've all got a good understanding of the use of that. So if at any point you're not feeling confident using your microphone, you can type responses into the group chat function. Very happy for you to do that. Okay, now I've added another one. Make sure you're fully clothed at all times. I did share earlier before we started recording about an incident that happened. So I have made an effort to get out of my PJs this morning. You can be in your pajamas. All I'm asking is that you're fully clothed. Excellent. All right, so another point is just so you realize how we use Zoom. We can share PowerPoints, Word documents, online resources, videos, that kind of stuff. So it's basically to facilitate your learning in an online environment. So in the face-to-face sessions that we've been doing a lot of think, pair, share, where we break into groups. We've been lots of whole group discussion, lots of activities, those sorts of things. And we can still do that using this platform. We can use breakout groups. I'm not going to use those today, but in the future, when we come back from your extended mid-semester break, we will be using those breakout groups. But I'm going to slowly ease you into it this week. So if you have a question or a comment, you can raise your hand. That's something that some tutors are using. I generally don't use that because I'm normally so busy yabbering on that I don't actually check. So I'm very happy for you to just unmute your mic and talk. Occasionally we might have someone talking over each other, but that rarely happens in my experience. So if you do have something to say, something to contribute, or a question, you can just interrupt me and say, "Hi, Ange," and I'd like you to say your name. So, "Hi, Ange, it's Grace," or "Sally here," and then you actually respond with your sharing your perspective or asking a question. So if you could say your name, that would be wonderful. Okay, so make sure if you can come and join the sessions. It makes the tutorials so much more fun and engaging, and I'm sure you all need that social interaction as well. So it's not just in terms of learning, which is vital, but it's also a bit of social interaction, engaging with the work, but engaging with each other as well. So this is very important for your learning, but also for your mental health and motivation as well. I know some of you may be a little shy to use your webcams, but please, it really does make a difference. As I said before, you might have housemates or family at home, and using the virtual background can really assist with that. So some of you I can see have found that button, but if you go into on your tab up the top, it will say mute, and then it will say stop video. And there's a little arrow, a drop down arrow. I want you to click on the arrow, and then you'll see where it says choose virtual background. So click on that, and then you'll see there are some images. So there's a bridge, the grass, the one that AJ's got, the planets, and then there's sort of a coloured lights, the beach. But there's all sorts of ones that you can use. So I have pressed that little plus button, and I've added some images that I can just choose to click on at any time. It's my 60s feel. So there's lots of things that you can play around with. This one is very popular. Yep. So it's up to you if you want to, do something like that, have a little bit of fun, make it a bit more interesting. Okay, very important. Please come prepared. Please make sure you do all of those tasks. Some of you may not have done it this week. I know it's been hectic. It's been troubling, and it hasn't been an easy fortnight, I guess, for anyone. So I think over the semester break, mid-semester break, I'd really like you all to make sure you get those tasks done that Jen is going to upload to the week 7 Blackboard site. Very important. And if you haven't done this week, I'd like you to go back and revisit that as well. Okay. Now I just want to do a check-in. I know some of you are probably finding it a little bit difficult in isolation and also with your online learning. Can you give me a bit of a thumbs up or a thumbs down as to how you're feeling at the moment? Is everyone okay? Be honest. Yeah, middle. middle, get that completely. Yeah, hard times. So, we've all been trying to find ways to motivate ourselves to get our study done. Some people have been talking about that they're chunking, so maybe spending 20 minutes, half an hour getting their assessment, working on their assessment or getting their task done to prepare for their Zoom sessions. Then someone, said they're doing a bit of exercise, doing some push-ups or whatever it is, some Pilates or going and cooking. My family, my children and my husband at home are baking a lot of bread, which is pretty cool. I'm not with them at the moment, so I'm not getting the benefit of that. But yeah, it's cool. And then other people, I put some examples on the screen. I'm sure you've all seen these, but if you haven't, I'm going to cut and paste them there in the chat. So I pasted those links into the chat session, not for you to watch now while we're meant to be engaging in the Zoom session, but later on. My family's favourite is the ping pong ball obstacle course. That's really cool. I'm sure all of you have seen that. My one is the Gloria Gaynor version of I Will Survive, but the one that a friend sent me this morning it's really good actually, because I'm a fan of Sound of Music. But yeah, people are doing amazing things, some freaky attempts to keep themselves and their families amused, but these are my faves for the week. Please share if you've got any links, others that you've found amusing. Please don't hesitate to cut and paste them into that group chat session to help keep us all amused in these times of a lot of stress for some families. Those families that are in crisis, we really need to, my heart goes out to a lot of people at the moment. Really difficult situations for some. Okay, let's center ourselves and start thinking about the content for this week's session. So in Jen's seminar, she talked about big R research and little r research. Let's start off the discussion. Who can tell me the difference between those two, big R and little r research? Who's going to be the first to share?
I can, if you want.
Yeah, thank you.
Big R research is stuff that's based on like scholarly articles, and little r's just observing, I think.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, thanks, Thomas. Yeah, so I guess big R requires some sort of formal ethical process, and it would usually involve a specific methodology with a data collection tool and also analysis. And then little r, as you say, is observation. But observation also involves having a data collection tool and also analysis as well. So we make inferences from what we actually observe or collect in terms of that data. So you as pre-service teachers, when you go out on your placement, you're going to be taking observations of the learning environment, of your supervising teacher, and of students and children. So these learning environment observations and your supervising teacher, that could be how the environment is set up, resources that are used, the approaches to strategies used by your supervising teacher. And in terms of observing the children and students in the learning environment, you would be collecting data to develop those really good understandings of their interests, of their needs, strengths, understandings, frustrations, challenges, and of course, their ways of learning.
Don't kiss me yet.
So what kind of what standards do you think you would be relating to for those particular things? What standards do you think you might be relating to? Any thoughts? What's the most important one? What about standard 1? Know students and how they learn. That's the obvious one, isn't it? Yeah. So, you know, really developing a good understanding of them. And that's, you know, through observation as a teacher, that's how you're going to do that, and data collection. But as a student, a pre-service teacher going out on placement, one of the other things that you would really need to do is to discuss with your supervising teacher. So they're going to know the ins and outs of the students to a really high degree. So in that first week of placement, you really need to make sure you're able to develop a good relationship with the supervising teacher and really pick their brains about those individual students, because that's going to help with your planning and with your understandings of all of your students. And of course, it will also help with your behaviour management as well. So understanding the reasons behind the student's behaviour. And that's developed through getting a really good understanding of them. So the skills that you would need to think about for your observations, most important one is having that very specific focus. And this was pointed out quite well in the seminar that Jen recorded when she pointed out the moonwalking bear clip. So that really showed us that, you know, you can use the same event from a variety of different perspectives. So when there's so much going on, it's really easy to miss out on some of those important areas. So it's important that you have a specific focus. Then the next one is to be objective. So we've talked about this before. Focus on what you see and what you hear. So the facts. The other one is listening. So really mindful, active listening of your students and your supervising teacher, and having good questions, good follow-up questions to clarify with your supervising teacher as well. That's also an important factor. Any questions there? There are a lot of other points in terms of really good observation, and you will learn these over the next 4 years. So you're going to be working hard to refine these skills and your practices. But any questions at this point? No? Okay. So as Jen pointed out again, you know, you have to have a purpose and an intent to make sure that your observation intent is clear, that you have goals for that particular observation. So she talked about framing the observation, and this was the template that she provided. So a clear purpose and intent. So for the first observation, your focus was around student engagement in asking questions. So you were asked to watch the clip, the classroom clip, and record data in the seating chart template. So to establish your understandings, your goal was to use the data to ensure all students were involved in the questioning process. So that was what your aim was. And that is what the template looked like. So what did you think of the actual data collection tool? Who would like to share? What did you think of that? You know, the use of the chart, you were focusing on just on the questions and you had to enter the data in the chart. What did you think of that process?
It made it a lot easier to, like, it really focused what your intentions were, just like recording how many people were asking questions, who were being asked questions. Yeah, it was just very focused, very streamlined.
Excellent. I like that. So it was focused. So it was objective. You couldn't infer anything. They were just the facts. That's what you saw, who asked questions and when. So yeah, very specific and very simple to use. Thanks, Clayton. So in terms of the data that you collected in the template, looking at what you observed, you were looking at who asks and who answers questions in the whole group questioning sequences. So what did you see? What did you notice about the data, and were there any specific trends? Anyone?
Yeah, sorry, it's AJ. I mean, I thought it was a bit weird because it didn't seem like the teacher didn't give the students any opportunities. Like, she never asked, do you have any questions? She just understood if they got that and that was that. There was no questions from the students. It was very one-sided from the teacher point of view. So yeah.
Okay. So there's some of the inferences that you made out of the data. So were there the patterns that you noticed, or the trends, were that the teacher was asking the questions and there weren't a lot of responses from the children, so it was quite teacher directed. Is that what you're saying, AJ?
Yeah, correct, yeah.
That's great, thank you. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, it's Tom. I saw that mostly the kids at the front were answering the questions. There was a couple at the back and they just weren't involved.
Okay. All right, so why do you think that might have been? I'm wondering why the kids at the front were asking all the questions. What do you think might have been the reason behind that? Any ideas?
Yeah, she may have put all like the wrap bags at the front of the class to be able to keep an eye on them easier and to encourage them to ask questions more.
Yeah, that's a possibility. So how would you find that out? How would you find out the reasons behind why she might have done that, or if that was actually what she did?
You'd have to be in the classroom with her and interact and watch how the students interact with each other, watch how they interact with the teacher.
Definitely.
Stuff like that.
And of course, you would be asking some clarifying questions as well. You'd want to, you might have these observations, but then you would need to follow up with questions to clarify. So, you noticed and then you wondered, okay, well, from that, what does that mean? So you would need to ask your supervising teacher some clarifying questions. Or if there were observations from your own practice, maybe someone else had observed you and noticed these things, or you may have used a swivel in the classroom to film yourself, you might need to reflect on some important aspects of your practice to really find out or think about the reasons behind why things are happening in a certain way in your classroom. Some very good points there, thank you. So I think, from those questions, what can you infer is something that you need to think about. And some of you have already shared some inferences that you have made from that data. Well done. Anyone else want to share any of those inferences that you've made?
Just change the seating plan, maybe revise it a bit more.
Yeah. So that's something that you would, as a pre-service teacher, that would be your next step. Excellent. So that's something that you would be, I guess, if we think in terms of being a change agent, that's definitely something that you might, a practice that you might implement, or an approach. Any other strategies or practices that you might adapt or change in that learning environment? Some of you spoke about the way the teacher was questioning and her focus on specific students. Is there anything that you could think of that you might adapt?
This is Clayton, by the way. So before, when someone said that the teacher was asking too many questions of the front students, maybe make her aware of that, so then she may distribute the questions more evenly amongst the students in the class. Yeah.
Definitely. I would be very careful making your supervising teacher aware of anything. I would reframe it can you tell me how you were, or the reasons behind why you were questioning these particular students. So always.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Always be very careful about how you pose questions with your supervising teacher, remembering that in a sense they are the expert, and although you will have questions and you will wonder, you'll think, you'll infer, you always need to make sure that there is a positive slant. Does everyone understand what I mean there? Yeah, just need to be very good. But a very good point, Clayton. It's something that I considered as well, most definitely. Anyone else want to share? One more. One way you might change or modify the practices in the classroom, the specific practices and approaches that you would use as a teacher to encourage the whole group to ask and answer questions. Come on, one more.
This is Tom. Maybe you could give them some kind of incentive to answer a question, like a reward or something.
Okay, yeah, definitely. What about the use of some specific strategies, like possibly some that you might have seen modelled in some of your classes at uni, things like think, pair, share. You might also encourage students to write down their responses. So for example, in this particular class, we have the option of the group, the Zoom chat. So you could write your responses, type them into the chat if you're not feeling so confident, or if you want to ask a question, there's also the option there that you can privately ask me something if you feel a bit awkward. You think, oh, that's a silly question, I don't want anyone else to judge me, which they won't because we're all in the same boat. And that's something that you really need to make sure your students are cognizant of, that they know that you're not going to judge them, that every question is valid, that you respect your students. So they need to be comfortable and confident that they're able to share. And that's, do you think the students might have felt that in the classroom? It's hard to tell, but I don't know, did you notice anything in terms of how their body language, I guess, or how they were interacting? Any signals there about how they felt about asking questions? Possibly not, because that was not the focus, was it? That might be something that you might want to go and have a look at and think about again, like another specific focus that you could look at if you wanted to re-watch it. Or if you haven't watched it yet, you could look at it twice and look at various from different perspectives. Okay, thank you very much all of you for sharing those. That was excellent, well done. So the focus of your second observation, this was the sandpit observation. So the observation was about using open-ended questions by your supervising teacher. So the goal was to expand your observation and listening skills to promote positive interactions. And I think if we, looking at that clip, the teacher really did, that was something that the teacher really did focus on, encouraging those positive interactions. But it was very subtle. So it's important that we observe carefully the teacher's body language. So what we see, what we hear, the open-ended questions that the teacher was using. So who would like to share an anecdotal record that they have written? So it could be one brief anecdotal record, or you may have done a series of them, or you may have done one that was a little bit longer. So anecdotal records are a very common observation tool across early childhood, primary and secondary, probably the most used observation tool. So who would like to share? No judgment, remember, Come on. No takers? Would anyone like to type one into the group chat, just a brief one? Okay. I can understand your reticence, because taking anecdotal records is something that takes a lot of practice. It's not easy to be objective. So we need to write down exactly what we see and what we hear. So we're not at this point in the observation and analysis process, we're not making any inferences. It's just what we see. So we would be looking specifically at the strategies used by the teacher, getting down to the child's level, really focusing, using active listening to hear what the students are saying, using open-ended questioning and inquiry-based learning to encourage them to share how they're feeling, to express themselves, and modelling really good strategies for social interaction as well. So they're just a few basic ones that I noticed the supervising teacher or the teacher being involved in. So, if we look at those were some of the things that we saw and the trends. What about some key questions that you had about if you were a pre-service teacher watching that supervising teacher? Are there any questions or that you might like to ask to clarify anything about positive interactions with students? No?
Hey, Lachlan. I noticed that like one of the children in that one, he seemed to start getting quite angry, and like rather than diffusing the situation, the teacher got him to sort of like got the kid to sort of like try and figure it out with the other students instead of like breaking it up himself, I guess.
Yeah. Excellent. So you could ask the supervising teacher something like, so I noticed that you, blah, blah, blah. What was the reasoning behind this? Is this a tool that you use or a strategy that you use often? Are there any other strategies that you use that possibly weren't obvious in the observation, in my observation? Or this is what I've observed. Is there anything I missed? So it's really important that you do raise those questions with your supervising teacher. And then, of course, you would be making inferences. So what you specifically saw, you would be inferring, reasons behind why the supervising teacher may have used a particular strategy. You may also take it a step further and look at some research around that so that you can really critically reflect on those observations. We've kind of discussed that one already. What questions would you have for your supervising teacher based on this observation? So for those of you who haven't had the opportunity to have a look at those clips and to think about that I notice, I wonder, I think, and then some sort of follow-up, I'd really like you to take some time over that mid-semester break to do that. Because as I said before, observation is going to be the most, I think, important tool that you're going to have in your pre-service teacher toolbox especially. So observing the environment, observing the resources used, observing your supervising teacher, the strategies, the approaches, and most importantly, observing and getting to know those students. So that first and vital professional standards, knowing students and how they learn. Any questions that this might have raised at all? Any questions that you have at this point? Okay. All right, so I think we've discussed that we've done an observation, we've made some inferences, and I think we've outlined that an observation can't stand alone. You really do need to interpret it. And this interpretation, this analysis, it's really going to demonstrate your understanding of what is meaningful and significant about what you've observed. So learning as a teacher, it's highly involved, and it certainly isn't instantaneous. It's going to take a lot of time. And to be a truly good teacher, it takes continuous, thoughtful and reflective practices. And as you can see on the slide, John Dewey's famous quote, "We don't learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience." And that's very much what life as a pre-service teacher going out onto placement is going to be all about for you. So over the next 4 years, you're really going to be developing these very important skills. So the next step is turning these observations and your inferences into reflections. So reflections that are going to change your practices in the learning environment. And this is going to be explained in more detail in the seminar for week 7. So this is when you come back from your extended mid-semester break. So if you check on the unit overview, that is for 2 weeks now. So we won't have any more learning forums next week or the week after. So we will continue, I think it's week beginning the 20th of April from memory. Any questions at all about that or about the unit overview that I just mentioned? Nope, nothing on the group chat. You do realise that if you have any questions, you can email me or you could email Jen. But best thing to do, I think, is to email your individual tutor so that Jen's not inundated with questions. So in emailing your individual tutor with questions would be a good idea. All right, so just wrapping up this particular session, this particular segment of the session, I want you to think about these points on the slide. And if you did get the opportunity to watch the clips, I want you to think about if you've went through any of these processes or you felt that you had to use or develop any of these skills. But also if you didn't get the opportunity yet, I just want you to think about the kind of skills that you would have needed. So read through them, and I just want you to, as you're reading, I just want you to unmute your mic and just tell me which of the ones you felt that that you noticed. Any that come to mind? Any that really stick out to you?
Hi, Ange, it's Jess. I definitely thought that observe to learn more about young people and other educators.
Good one. Excellent. Anyone else?
Hi, it's Clayton. One of them that popped out to me was being open to experiment with new ideas and take risks. Yeah, I think that's quite important to be willing to make mistakes because that's how you usually learn.
Excellent, Clayton. Thank you.
Hi, Ange. This is Chao. And I like that one, being curious about education and young people.
Excellent. Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Anyone else? So it's just a matter of unmuting your mic and reading it out. Very easy. One more. What about this first one? Being self-reflective about your beliefs, assumptions, and potential biases. This is really important. This is one, as a pre-service teacher, that I struggled with. I found it really difficult to be objective, first up in recording my observations, so just recording what I saw and what I heard. But then in terms of making inferences, you know, we've got all of these beliefs and assumptions that, you know, have been from our upbringing, from our culture, all of these things that we bring to teaching. And so, you know, when we do make assumptions, it's something that we just can't help ourselves. It's something that we do. So I think we really need to be reflective about how we infer and what assumptions and biases that we actually hold. That's really important. And I admit it, it's something that I actually struggled with. I really needed to be very reflective about it. And it took me, you know, a couple of years before I actually felt confident in my professional practice to be able to do that. And it's something that I spoke to my supervising teacher about in my very last placement. I did a placement in a multi-age school, so it was out in the country, and I taught years 1 to 5, and the principal, there were only 2 teachers, the principal taught years 6 and 7. So, there was a lot going on, and it was something that I really needed to think about, those biases that I brought to my teaching practice. What about identify and read high quality scholarly work about education? So making those critical links to theory. You may not have actually thought about this at this point, which is completely understandable, but as educators, it's something that we need to do. We need to make links to the theory in our practice. And this again is something that we're going to focus on moving into week 7. So really looking, I guess, at both big R and little r research as well, because for me, I think they're both interconnected, very much so. Any thoughts on that, anyone? Not at this point. Okay, so I'd like you to think about what we've discussed and have a look at the standards table and just see if you can pick out any standards that really were clearly evident or you can make links to in what we've been discussing. And again, I'd just like you to unmute your mic and call them out. Just read them out. Don't need to, you can. Yep. Who was that?
And it's Tom, professional learning.
Yeah, professional learning. Okay, so which one are we talking about? Standard
6.
6. Okay, so looking at standard 6, were there any particular ones that really were clearly you could link to?
Hi, it's Zoe. 6.3 in particular, engage with colleagues and improve practice, by watching other people teach.
Definitely. So in as a pre-service teacher and also in your professional practice, so those communities of practice that we've talked about, really making sure that you engage and provide each other with feedback about our practices, and then follow up with evaluation and reflection and changing our practices, adapting them accordingly. Thank you. That's a really good one. What else?
It's lesson 1.2, understand how teachers learn.
Yes.
Learners learn.
Yeah, definitely. So demonstrate knowledge and understanding of research into how students learn and the implications for teaching. Yeah, exactly. We really did talk about that one. Anything else? What about here in professional practice? Any that really stand out to you?
I think
5. Oh, okay.
You go, Clayton. It's okay. I was just gonna say 5.1, so assess student learning.
Yeah, definitely. Assess student learning. So it's all about that data collection, understanding of assessment strategies, informal and formal, diagnostic, formative and summative approaches. Very, very important. So that's all about how we're going to collect that data and the observation. Vital. And what about this one? Interpret student data. So 5.4. Very much. And of course, it's all related to reporting on student achievement as well. So without the observations and the data, we're not going to be able to demonstrate that understanding that we have of our students. Okay. Well done. So as you can see, we've really looked across all of the 3 focus areas in this one. And once again, very important that we do make those links to the professional standards, because when you go out on your professional practice, that's what you're going to be making links to on a regular basis. Okay, so Jen asked you in the week 6 engagement activities, she asked you to generate a question about something that you personally might be interested in, like you could have used these ones, but It doesn't have to stem from this unit. It could come from other units, or just a general question that you have that you're interested in. So then you were asked to find and read an article that relates to this question. So just again, to get that critical background, the critical reflection and links to theory about what you might be interested in. Did anyone get the opportunity to do that? Anyone choose a particular focus area, or is there a particular focus area, something that may have come out of your first assessment task, for example? Anything that you is significant to you?
It's AJ. Yeah, I had one. That was quite broad, but you can get very, very specific. How come there's not as many male teachers within schooling today and stuff? But you can look at it from multiple angles, from primary, early childhood, and secondary. I looked at it a bit more broadly, but yeah, that's what I had.
That's a really good one. Yeah, love it. And that's something that, you know, is that something that is, you know, of particular interest to you, AJ?
Yeah, definitely.
Good. Excellent. That's a really good example. So, you know, something simple, and it is broad. It can be broad. That's fine. Anything else? No, it could relate to, you know, sustainability is a really important one. There might be a particular area that you're very interested in terms of your personal interests that you might want to bring into your professional practice, and how you might start looking at research behind that. What's current, what's seminal, so what previous research has said about that, and more recent as well. So with more recent research, we talk about mainly in the last 5 years. Anyone else want to share one?
I was just considering like the amount of teachers that teach out of their subject areas in high schools, and how that affects their, I guess, like, what's the word? Not efficiency, but like the effectiveness of their teaching in high schools.
Again, Sophia, that's a fabulous question. And I think that's one that a lot of secondary teachers are thinking about and do questions. So fabulous. So these were 3-4 examples of specific areas of interest. So during that break, your 2 weeks, I want you to think about this, and I want you to just find one article and follow the engagement activities that Jen has set out. And again, this is going to be really good support moving into that second assessment task. Anything else before we move on? No? Okay. Any questions? Any questions about, you might, in terms of the upgraded unit overview? No? What I want you to concentrate on, as I've said, are those engagement activities during your 2-week break, but I also want you to have a very good look at the assessment 2 task sheet. And I want you to come with questions. So in week 7, when we have our Thursday 10 a.m. Zoom session, our learning forum, I want you to come with questions. And for those of you at home who are listening to the recording, the same with you as well. So with your tutors in whichever class you're in, I'd really like you to think about start thinking about that second assessment task and any questions. So all of your tutors are currently marking your assessment task 1. We're finding that some really fantastic graphic organisers and some creative drawings as well, and some really good content. And some nice links to some research beyond what we've discussed in class as well. So some really good stuff happening there. So we've got a lot to mark. I think I've got about 140. So as you would imagine, that's going to take a little bit of time. So I would say within 2 weeks or so. Jen, we haven't talked about timeframes yet, but I would imagine a 2-week turnaround, possibly 3, but we will get them back to you as soon as possible. As you can imagine, all of your tutors are working really hard to make sure that all of the material, all of their strategies and approaches can now be moved from the internal face-to-face platform, learning and teaching, over to online platforms now. So that is taking us quite a lot of time, and it will vary between subjects as well. So if you could be patient, we're all doing our best, as are all of the many teachers throughout Australia and throughout the world who are looking at moving learning online across early childhood, across primary and secondary. So, you know, we're really being change agents now. We're having to adapt our practices while still, very, very importantly, focusing on the individual needs of our students. And one of the big things that I've been thinking so much about are those students that are at home at the moment, possibly feeling isolated, maybe not having access to devices for online learning. And so I think it's important that teachers, you know, where possible, hopefully there are avenues, but just to check in on them, not just about their learning, but their well-being as well. And children, people, we're such social creatures. We also need those opportunities for social interactions as well. So these Zoom sessions, they're learning platforms, but now these, I really do see them as platforms for check-ins, for checking on each other, for providing a bit of social interaction as well. So what I normally do at this point in the class, what I do is I stop share and I stop sharing the PowerPoint, and then I go into what I call Brady Bunch view. So this is gallery view. So what you can do is in the right-hand corner, if you can't see that gallery view, there's a little rubric that if you press on it, you should be able to. And then you'll also see, hopefully in your view, that you can expand and look at lots of different people as well, because we've got quite a few participants here at the moment. So what I do is, if you want to, you're quite welcome to press leave meeting and say goodbye and off you go to do your own thing. But I usually go away and come back in about 20 minutes. I'm going to go and make myself a coffee and go and have a chat to my mum, make sure she's all good. And it'll give you a chance to have a chat about your current situation, maybe sharing ways that you've been motivating yourself to continue with your learning and to engage. As I said, some students are talking about, lots of them actually that I've talked to in other sessions, chunking. So just spending small amounts of time throughout the day focusing on assessment or focusing on doing your engagement activities for your Zoom sessions. So really thinking about how you can continue to keep yourself motivated and engaged in your learning. Because I know it's, at the moment, there are so many distractions and so many concerns, and you've probably got work issues and possibly worried about family members as well. So if you need to reach out, we're here, QUT counselling as well, or if you are struggling, you need to talk to someone about it. But this is the opportunity for you to share with each other. So I'm going to go away now. I'll say goodbye and wish you all the best.
Bye.
And have a safe and happy 2 weeks. Okay, everyone, have a chat. I'll be back in about 20 minutes to turn the system off.